Hi there, this is Billy Earl here on Delmarva Americana. Today we've got Robbie Kilchestein, luthier. He's a local boy who makes just a beautiful guitar. We're going to talk to him for a little while, so get ready. To introduce Robbie, Mr. Guitar Man. Robbie, say hello to everybody out there.
Hi everybody, and welcome to my small and humble shop here in Whitten, Maryland, and I hope to be able to show you what I'm learning and ready to tell you what I know.
Wonderful. Robbie, we've heard wonderful things about your guitars, and I know Jimmy Rowbottom, one of the great guitar players of this area, plays one of yours. How did you get involved with this at first?
The guitar that Jimmy has now, I built back in 1995 in a shed on Ward Road, and what made me want to make a guitar, I really can't say exactly. My uncle, who was a very good carpenter, gave us a guitar back in 1966, and I was just kind of taken by it, and I've always loved music, and so I thought I'd give it a try to see what I could do with making one. And being a carpenter by trade, I felt like I had a little bit of the cow by the horns and thought I'd give it a shot.
So you made this guitar, and I guess the bug bit you, didn't it?
Well, I took a 22-year respite, and the reason I've gotten back into it now is the older I get, you know, finishing hardwood floors is a love of mine, working with wood, but the guitar work, building guitars is a whole lot lighter, and I'm hoping to get into this sort of towards the retirement age type arrangement for me, and do something that's a little easier on my body, but still keep my mind very active, because building guitars is something where you never relax. You're constantly on your toes.
Well, that's a beautiful thing. Let's talk about one of the guitars that are here. Are you gonna go get one of those?
Yep.
Let's talk. Now that appears to be a classical guitar.
It is a classical guitar. This is the first.
Okay, let's go ahead and cut. Let's put everything that you're going to need over there, so we don't have to do that again.
Okay. I'll put it back behind this.
There we go.
This easier. Let me get this here.
That's my fault. I should have thought about that.
Okay. I'm ready when you are.
Okay. Cut. Tell us about these guitars that you have sitting there. They're beautiful.
Well, this was the first one that I made when I got the shop up and running back at the end of last year, actually. And I started off with a parlor size classical guitar, and this was a gift for my first grandchild. And basically, I wanted to keep it very simple to get my feet back in the water again. And I made the top of the guitar out of some old leftover quartered sawn white oak that I had from a staircase that I built a few years back. Purchased the utility at Chesapeake Woodworkers up in Millsboro, Delaware, and bought the parts for the tuners and stuff, and at LMI out in California. But the ebony even came from Chesapeake Woodworkers, and this was basically about a 2.5 month process for me. And this was the first guitar that came out of the shop. And my granddaughter's been quite happy with it. We just got to get her to pick it up more.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I have 4 grandchildren, and I've bought them guitars. I bought them pink guitars, but they were unplayable, and I just wanted them to get interested in it, which they did. And I've got little classical guitars now for them from Belgium that are about that size. I guess that's parlor size.
They're parlor size, and then they're made more and with women in mind, or small children. And this was the second guitar that came out of here, and this one was made for my son's daughter, and Madeline is my 4th grandchild. I have to keep track. I've got 5 of them now. Yeah. And she asked me to build her one, so I went ahead and bought the material again up in Millsboro. This is quilted sycamore, highly figured, Douglas fir top, ebony came from there as well. And again, the tuners came from California. Bridge, every piece of these, both of these guitars that you see were all handmade. None of this was a kit. All resawn on my bandsaw. Okay. And milled right here at the shop, and then assembled.
Well, they certainly are beautiful.
And I would strum it for you, but I know they're out of tune. But then after that one was hanging in the back in my spray booth to be waiting to be polished, I went ahead and started this one. This was I'm going to call this my first full-size guitar. And this guitar was made from Martin OM plans. And this entire guitar was purchased from LMI out in California. And it's a Eagleman spruce top with Indian rosewood sides and back, mahogany neck. The inlay I did myself. I thought I would try to do something here different, and I got some Purple Heart and maple and cut this neck in half before I shaped it and then glued this ribbon inside of it. This guitar also will have a sound port. And the guitar that I made for Jimmy, he came in here and I put a new top on for that guitar. And while it was here, I put a sound port in Jimmy's guitar and he loves it. And
the sound port, that's where the electronics go?
No, this is something that's catching on. It allows the player to hear himself better.
Oh, I got you.
The sound hole up front, the music and the tones are projected forward. And so the thought behind the sound port is to allow the player himself to be able to hear even better. And it's also the school of thought for the sound ports is like when you try to pour gasoline out of a gas can without opening the vent valve.
Okay.
It doesn't come out very easily. You open that vent up and you give it another escape, and then the gas flows a whole lot better. So, and that's a very simplified explanation for it, but this also allows the airflow through the guitar. So
but you're manipulating the energy.
Exactly.
That's what you're doing.
And that's the purpose of the sound port.
Wow, that's cool.
So, and, all inlays. Did all this bending here at the shop and inlaid that right here.
Somebody told me the other day that there was a recent decree by the International Court in The Hague regarding exotic hardwoods not being able to be shipped to certain places from certain places. Do you know anything about that?
I know that things like shells, the inlay material, a lot of that stuff cannot be shipped outside of the country. I know the Brazilian rosewood is one of those species that you better not be caught with.
Right.
They do sell it reclaimed. There are people who will sell Brazilian rosewood that's been harvested from old buildings.
Right, yeah.
And that. But as far as the species of wood, I'm sure there's plenty of them out there now that the international law is getting involved in because this stuff is becoming scarce. And also for that one reason, I want to try to get into, if I really get wrong with this, using high quality plywoods.
Okay. And
stuff that's not going to take so much from what we have here and what we're left with. So, and I know it can be done. I've read some articles where there's some really good high quality plywoods where it's glued together with very thin veneers, and they're getting great sounds out of it. And so, that'll be something that I will probably be experimenting with and playing with.
Well, we can't wait to see what the developments are in that area. Walk us through, if you will, how does that become that when it started with a bunch of separate pieces of wood? Do you have a protocol that you follow?
Over here, this is going to be my next classical guitar. So this is where this begins. It's basically just a pile of wood. And, where I start with it, I usually start with bending.
You're going to have to light somewhere. You can't go back and forth because I can't follow you.
Okay.
Are you over there where you're...
No, let's do this, Bill. Let's bring this over here.
Okay.
Keep it simple. And ask that question over for me again. Because I have several things I can show you here. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Okay. Do me a favor and explain to people like me, like I was a 5-year-old, how does a pile of wood become a beautiful work of art / musical instrument?
One of two ways for me. I either purchase kits from California through LMI, or I purchased the wood in Delaware and I resaw it. This is a kit that I've purchased, and I call it a kit. It's not a model where you have all the pieces already made. That came from LMI, and they basically send you the brace wood, the Indian wood, rosewood back, in 2 pieces that I will have to glue together. My Sitka spruce top, my mahogany neck blank.
Ooh, yeah.
And my Indian rosewood sides.
Now, rosewood and mahogany are both extremely hard woods. Is that correct?
Indian rosewood is much harder than mahogany. Your Indian rosewood on the specific gravity spectrum, I believe, is around 0.7, if my memory serves me correctly. Mahogany is somewhere around 0.5.
And the idea is to make
so it's a little softer.
the wood as hard, or use wood that's as hard as possible.
No, not necessarily.
No.
No.
Then why would you use those woods?
Well, you're asking a good question. Generally the backs and sides are stiffer than the tops, but being new at this, I'm sure there's a whole lot of luthiers who would give you different answers. But you'll find that the backs and sides are usually harder material. Your tops are usually soft, much softer than the back and sides. And for instance, this one that I'm making all right here in the shop, resawing everything, this is a redwood top. And this is reclaimed from a pickle factory in Hebron. So this will have, this particular parlor guitar will have some local nostalgia, but you can see how flimsy that is. It's very, very flimsy.
Is this a good area for reclaimed wood?
I don't know what exactly is out there in the area, but when I went up to Chesapeake Woodworkers one day to get some material, I had been reading about redwood, and Leighton there told me they had some redwood sitting out in the yard that had been reclaimed from the pickle factory in Hebron. And I went out and rummaged through the pile and found some really nice pieces of straight grain, which is what you're looking for when you build guitars. You want the quartered sawn material. And I snatched up on it. And I will be back for more of it because it really has a very nice tap tone to it. I don't know if you'll be able to hear that on the camera or not, but it has a nice throng to it.
Okay.
And so,
and that tells you that as a guitar, it's going to resonate well.
It's going to have, yes, very good tone to it. And so I'm looking forward to see what this guy sounds like. This particular top will be about 10 to 15% thicker than normal. This top here is a little thinner than normal. Usually they go around 2.2 to 2.5 millimeters in thickness.
Okay.
This top is around 1.9 to 2, so it's a little thinner. Gives you a quicker pop. It doesn't have as much sustain, but has a I think this will be a very good strumming guitar. And so once I get the kit, where I cut it up or I get my kit from LMI, usually the first thing I do is bend the wood, the side woods, put them in my bender, heat them up, and this gets to about 300 degrees, and you lower this little wheel, bend the waist, and you have one of these each on the side, and you pull that down over the upper and lower bout, and let it sit in there for about a half hour and cool down, pop it out, and bend the other side. Then you glue the back and sides together. I take them and run them through my thicknessing sander, and get them to where I want, and then I put it all inside one of these forms, depending on which guitar I'm building, whether it's a parlor, or whether it's the OM, or whether it's the classical mold I have. And once the sides are bent, they're placed inside of here. These devices here, you open up, the spreaders, and keep the sides in their place while you glue on your head block, your front block down here and your tail block where your neck attaches, and start building. You put your kerfing in, your bracing, and slowly but surely things come together and you have a guitar when everything's said and done. And you're looking, I think if I were able to be in the shop for one solid week where I didn't have to go back out and finish floors, I think I could probably build a guitar in 5 to 6 days.
Okay.
It's the finishing is what takes so long afterwards. Yeah. Once the guitar is assembled, then you take it to the spray booth. If you're going to do a lacquer finish, each time in the spray booth, you spray, to start with, you spray 2 coats of sealer, you let it hang for an hour, come back, check it out, make sure there's no, if it has to be lightly sanded to get any boogers out. I guess that's a technical term. And then you spray it again with 2 more coats of vinyl sealer, and then I let it hang for a day or 2.
Okay.
Come back, sand it with 320 grit sandpaper, get it nice and smooth, get it flat and level. Make sure everything is mowed nice and smoothly. Go in and spray 2 more coats of full body gloss lacquer. If I like it when I'm finished after that, I take and sand it then with, again, with 320, 400 grit, get it nice and smooth. And then the final 2 coats of lacquer, which will give me my total of 8 coats, I cut it about 10 to 15% and spray 2 more coats, and then it hangs for 3 weeks. And then I will wet sand it with 500 to 600 grit sandpaper until I get it nice and smooth and flat, because it's still, even after all the sanding, it still tends to get a little roughness in it, very light roughness. And then I wet sand it with the 500 grit and put the guitar on the polishing wheel and shine her up. And then you have that wet, glassy, smooth looking guitar when everything's said and done. That's the whole object of the game, I guess.
Now, is that that headstock, is that of your design?
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Because that is what a lot of people look for immediately to identify an instrument.
Mm-hmm. It's just something, and I think probably everyone, I don't know if I'll have a signature design on my headstocks. You can see this one is different than this one. I probably will shake them up every time. This design came from Bill Cupiano out of his book, which is what I built Jimmy's guitar with. There were no videos back in those days. I did it all from a book, and this was the design that was inside the book that I used to build that first classical guitar. And every guitar will have my, I don't know if you can get that from there. I had an artist, Janelle Willie, design a logo for me, and I used my family crest. And every one of those will be inside with a wax seal on it, stamped with JMK. The name of the business is JMK Stringed Instruments.
Okay.
The business was named after our family's brother. We lost our little brother back in February last year, and so I decided that I would name the business after Jeffrey's memory.
Very nice. Okay, so how many of these guitars have you built?
I am up to 3 right now, and starting 4 and 5.
Okay.
So, and that's out of this shop, not counting the one that Jimmy has.
Okay.
Jimmy's serial number is 0000, and then started with 1, 2, and 3 in here. So 4 and 5 are on the block, and this is my parlor guitar I'm going to be making out of Purple Heart and the redwood, as I was explaining earlier, and my utility neck with a maple and ebony inlay this time.
Let me just interrupt you for a minute. How can people get a hold of you? And are you taking orders?
I am taking orders. I'd be glad to take an order. would be excited to take an order. They can reach me by phone, or they can message me on Facebook. My phone number is 443-235-6440, and would be very excited if I got a call for a commission to build a custom guitar. It would make my day.
Okay.
And then back here, this is the ebony bridge that was handmade. That will be going on top of this guitar when everything's said and done.
Bridge is also an important part of a guitar, isn't it?
It is, and that's the thought that goes into the height of the bridge and the saddle needs to be thought out long before they're glued on the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
That is one thing that that is a challenge. That's all a challenge. You know, I tell people while building the guitars, while I'm in here, there is absolutely no time that I can relax, and it's not a stress. It's just
perseverance.
It's perseverance. It's an exciting pressure because I'm making these intricate cuts. You know, when you cut a piece of hardwood flooring wrong, you pitch it over your shoulder and you go grab another piece. When you cut one of these wrong, there's been a couple of days I wanted to sit down and cry.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
You know, they say men don't cry, but I think luthiers cry. Because it can be extremely frustrating, but the most rewarding part of it is when I stick it out and I come blowing out the other side. And
Well,
it works.
from my own personal opinion, and I bet you, as a matter of fact, I'm going to say hi to Alan Steinhorn, who's going to be watching this. Alan's my roommate in college, and he's been up to 150 guitars. Because to Alan and to me, and I bet you to you, they're not just an instrument, they are a piece of art. And art has a different place in our world and in our lives than other things do. They exist for their own sake. Mm-hmm. And I think when people look at a beautiful guitar, I know they see a methodology to creating beautiful music, but there's more to it than that.
Right.
There's more to it than that.
It is. It's artwork. An initial thong, and it dies down and comes back again, like a gong. You know, it reverberates. And that's what you're looking for. Then comes the bracing, and the bracing changes everything. You're taking the top and you're gluing braces on the back. They're roughed out sizes. And then as you glue these, as you take and shape these braces to the designs that they're made to be, you take off a little wood, you pick it up, and you tap it. You listen for that tone, and you want it to get richer as you go along. And I haven't built enough guitars yet, but they say there's that spot where you want to stop, because if you go too far, you've taken off too much material. So,
okay.
So that's the one thing I listen for while I'm building in the top is that constant tap tone and the voicing of the top. And the same goes for the back, because the back plays a part of it. So this is a very dense wood. And so it's a little deeper of a thong, I guess you would call it. But again, this I haven't decided whether this is going to be a classical guitar or a steel string, and I'm beating around whether it'll be a 24 and a half scale, or either a 25.4. I may make it a full size neck and make it a travel guitar for somebody who wants to have a nice travel guitar, because it would be an expensive beginning guitar for somebody. But depending on whether I go classical or steel will determine how many braces I put across the back of this.
Because of the stress.
Yes. Classical doesn't have as many braces on it. You have 3 for a classical, 4 for your steel string, according to our plans. And this, of course, I've got it drawn out for the steel string, so I'm having a feeling that's the way I'm going to go. And you have that classic X brace that will go on here, and then you have your fingers. And as opposed to a classical guitar, where you have the fan bracing, the Torres fan bracing that comes across here, and then you have your tone bars down here. These braces in a classical are all tone; they're all for sound. In steel string, it's all support.
Okay.
Because of the tension. And then there'll be a bridge patch in here. And the classicals have bridge patches as well. Can you hand me that guitar top right there?
Yeah.
can show you the differences in the bracing. Thank you. Again, this was the guitar that I built in my shed, and this is a classical style bracing. This came off the old guitar that I made for Jimmy. After 22 years, the top came up to go, so he asked me to put a new top on for him, and I did. But this is your Torres fan bracing, and then your tone bars, and this is all for tone in the classical. And then you have your bridge patch, and then you have your sound hole patches here, and then this, of course, is for your neck bracing. So there's those are your differences in the classical nylon string guitar as opposed to a steel string acoustic guitar. So basically what I look for is I want that nice sweet sound, and so far I'm happy with the way those guitars sound, and you know, perhaps I can tune one up and strum it for you before you leave today.
Tell me what you're thinking about when you put the bridge on and you're thinking about the action. For a guitar like this, how close do you want the strings to the fretboard?
Robbie O'Brien recommends 3.5 millimeters, which is, I'm following Robbie to the book, to the T. I'm really leaning on his expertise. But he likes to see a 3.5 millimeter height above the 12th fret on steel string and 12th fret on the classical guitar, and then 2.5 on the treble side. And Robbie likes to slant the side of his guitar on the treble, on the bass side, make it a little bit lower so he can get that string down lower. So I look for 3.5 over the bass for the bass action and 2.5 for the treble action. And this particular neck has a 16-inch radius to it, and I'm about a half millimeter lower on the bass side. And so that's the action I'm going to be looking for on here. And then you know, the bridge is already where I wanted it. It's around 10.5 millimeters high, and then the saddle will take up the rest of the slack once it comes down to the strings come down to meet the saddle. Now, the one thing that I found interesting, you know, your scales in classical guitars, 660, 650 for full-size guitars, and then this particular guitar has a 25.4 scale. What they're teaching now, and I'm sure it's been around for a while, but Robbie sets all his bridges at 2 millimeters farther back.
Okay.
And the reason for doing that is so the guitar will play more in tune, because you play more fretted notes than you do open notes. And so far, with Jimmy's guitar, because I completely rebuilt his neck, because I had to remove the fretboard to get his top off, both of those guitars and this guitar as well will be compensated 2 millimeters. And on Jimmy's guitar and on both of those guitars, I nailed the intonation. It's perfect.
Okay.
You have your open string, you play that at E, A, D, G, B, E, wherever it may be, and then it needs to repeat at the 12th fret. And all three guitars are right on right now.
Okay. Do guitar players commonly ask you to lower the action?
Well, since no one has called me to make one,
There'll be a first.
There'll be a first, and when that person comes to me, we will sit down and we'll go over all that. And I'll ask him where he wants that action to be. The guitar we made completely for that person. I will ask him how he wants his action set, how he wants his neck carved.
Yeah.
When I get to that point, I probably will invite him back again before I do my final carving on the neck, and ask him if it feels good in his hand. And just make sure it's right for him before I put it together, or her. And I will build it according to their specifications all the way.